Welcome back to Sociology 226. This is Émile Durkheim, video 1. In this video, I've got 3 goals. First, I'm going to tell you about the life of Émile Durkheim, my favorite sociologist. I even have a picture of him on my desk. Next, I'm going to give you a brief sketch of Durkheim's sociological thought. Finally, I'll get you ready to do the readings. Let's go. Durkheim's life is pretty boring compared to Marx's. He was born to a Jewish family in Lorraine and was destined to go to rabbinical school. It was at the École Normale Supérieure, admitted 1879 after 3 tries, where he would break with Judaism and shift his focus to the practical importance of moral philosophy, fostering social integration. After a visit to Germany, Durkheim taught high school for 3 years before taking a job at Bordeaux, teaching there for 15 years and writing his major works we read to this day: The Division of Labor and Society, The Rules of Sociological Method, and Suicide. He made his nephew, Marcel Mauss, do most of the numerical research for the latter. Durkheim returned to Paris in 1902 to the Sorbonne, where he took upon himself to popularize the discipline of sociology and assist France in the transition to secular education. Here he wrote his masterwork, The Elementary Forms of Religious Life. They say Durkheim died of a broken heart, with many of his students and his son dying in the First World War, which he initially supported. Let's move on to Durkheim's sociological thought. 3 aspects are crucial. Durkheim wants a social science of moral attachments. Let's look to each of these 3 components in that order. First, Durkheim wants to examine social life in terms of various social wholes. Canadian society, American society, ancient Greek society. Each of these societies can be ranked and compared to one another. Each has definite properties, components that make it what it is, and are not simply the result of a bunch of individuals coming together. Society is something more than the sum of its individual parts. Sociology is the scientific study of these more than individual parts. Secondly, scientific. Durkheim argues that the point of sociology is to come up with a typology of all social forms. Just like the biologist wants to classify life, the economist wants to capture market behavior. Sociologists study social organisms. Each social form has objective attributes that we can isolate, study, and codify. Durkheim wants to come up with a method that lets us look at our own object, social order. These methods are scientific. There are concrete and discoverable laws of collective life. Finally, Durkheim uses the word moral in a very particular way. Durkheim's is a descriptive morality. This means he is interested not in what is right or wrong, but the various ways societies decide what is right or wrong. He isn't interested in judging acts in themselves, but how each social form judges the actions taken by individuals within it. When we talk about Durkheim's approach, remember, he wants a scientific study of the morals at work in various social forms. To repeat, the object of sociology is the collective moral order. Don't look at whether or not particular crimes are bad, says Durkheim. Look at why things are crimes in the first place, and if all societies have those crimes. This is what I mean by a descriptive morality. Let's look a little more closely at what Durkheim means by social order. Sui generis is Latin for of its own kind. We have the kinds of things economists talk about, markets, surplus value, and the kind of things that psychologists talk about, drives, cognition. These are not things of the sociological kind, outside of their relations to the collective moral order. Durkheim is going to argue, just as there are different kinds of organisms which are explorable by biology, there are various types of societies, of the kind that is explored by sociology. Keep this in mind. The biological metaphor runs very deep through Durkheim's thought. Just as biological organisms regulate themselves, so too do societies. Queen's University is an organism, just like an ostrich. Our job is to discover its properties scientifically, just as biologists study animals. Social order is an order of its own kind, made up of moral attachments that has its own rationality. There is a reason to collective life that has its own rational order. Hence, sociology. We have to come up with instruments to follow this order, and not those of economics or psychology or biology. They have their object and we have ours. Don't confuse them. Let me contrast economics with sociology to make this clear. Consider what the economist does when writing about consumer preferences. As consumers, we want the biggest bang for our buck. We purchase those goods that give us the greatest pleasure relative to others at the lowest cost. So when apples increase in price relative to oranges, we buy more of the former and less of the latter. Individuals are rational because they make decisions on this calculation. There is a collective drive to buy more of one than the other, but only because a great many individuals make this choice, individually. Durkheim is saying that social order follows its own reason, external to the subject matter of individual mental states. Groups don't decide to buy things because individuals do. Individuals act the way they do because of the structure of the group. There exists a collective social order that determines individual choices. It is moral, not because we are saying what is right, do this, do that, but describing the actions people take with social causes. From the preface to the second edition of the Division of Labor in Society, we read, "A group is not only a moral authority regulating the life of its members, but also a source of life, sui generis." To repeat, sociology is the science of moral forces. One of Durkheim's many goals is coming up with a set of scientific tools that sociologists can use in their craft. One of the most innovative parts of Durkheim's sociology is the kind of evidence that he uses. Durkheim uses theoretical, historical, and statistical methods to make his case. Let's consider his most famous book, Suicide. Suicide is a sociological classic because it is one of the first comprehensive studies to use both statistical work and sociological theory together. While many criminologists had used the two together, they had also done so using psychology, philosophy, biology, etc. As far as sociology is concerned, suicide is one of the first so-called mixed methods studies. Durkheim evaluates statistics about men and women who commit suicide, suicide in various religions, the ages and location of people who do so, etc. He does so to verify the kinds of theories he had in the division of labor and in the rules of sociological method. He then uses sociological theory to draw the lines in between the data that has been compiled, though he made his nephew Marcel Mauss do all the boring research work. We're going to return to the analysis of suicide in the following video, but it's important that you understand that Durkheim believed a science of social order must be done theoretically, statistically, and historically. Most importantly, Durkheim thinks that moral attachments can be scientifically measured, compared, and assessed. It's really important you understand that Durkheim's morality is a descriptive morality. Let's look at that more closely. Earlier I indicated that Durkheim wants to study moral attachments, that he didn't want to determine what was right or wrong, but how individual societies treat particular acts as right or wrong. Here, let me give you some examples to show you what I mean. First, traffic. In order to capture the moral dimensions of driving, the frustrations and restrictions and capabilities associated with it, we have to look to the social order. Traffic isn't a bunch of individuals making autonomous decisions at a given point. There is a moral order which guides actions, an order of its own kind. You want to see if the moral order doesn't restrict behavior? Drive on the other side of the road. Of course, many people do drive on the other side of the road across the world. The point, though, is that we develop an ingrained tendency to follow the rules of the social system in which we dwell. Note, these tendencies are ingrained in a particular social context. My parents, for example, used to go to Barbados once a year, and as a Commonwealth country, they use the British system, driving on the opposite side of the road. When you rent a car there, they have a special sticker, L for let, on the cars so that everyone knows to steer clear of this person, likely from Canada or the US, who has no clue about how to drive on the other side of the road. This example shows us that by having moral constraints on agents, society shapes future actions. Moral forces not only restrict behavior, they have enabling qualities. They shape the ability to perform tasks in the future. Consider, finally, applying descriptive morality to the rules of hockey. Here, the rules are not individually subjective. We are all equally required to follow them, and they restrict our behavior. A player can't pass the opposing blue line before the puck is passed to them. Of course, these rules are arbitrary. You previously couldn't make a pass across your blue line and the center line legally, but the rules changed. They might change, but rules there must be. For hockey to remain a sport, there must be rules. So long as there are rules, they are going to be broken. This is normal. To prevent them, they must be enforced. This is normal too. Rule making, rule breaking, and rule enforcement is a normal, essential component of social order. In performing these small feats, driving or playing sports, you and I are taking part in social action, which is subject to its own laws and its own causes. We can't explain either of these things strictly in terms of the materials that constitute them, or in terms of the rules in people's heads. Through these moral facts, we learn about the restrictive, extra-individual codes that allow social order to continue. This is not caused by the dynamics of material relationships, but by social causes. If the collective moral order isn't in our heads, then where is it? Here we come to one of the key concepts flowing throughout Durkheim's sociology, the collective consciousness. From the division of labor in society. The totality of beliefs and sentiments common to the average members of a society forms a determinate system with a life of its own, and it can be termed the collective or common consciousness. In fact, it is independent of the particular conditions in which individuals find themselves. Individuals pass on, but it abides. Again, Durkheim is not appealing to individual psychology, but to collective drives and prohibitions. Durkheim argues that individualism is the product of the collective consciousness. Durkheim says that we are each of two minds. We have an individual mind and individual consciousness, and there is a supra-individual collective consciousness that emerges when individuals are in groups and stays with us as members of a particular group at the level of social order. Individual minds, plural, and the collective mind, singular, as possessed by the social organism. Now, one of Durkheim's most extreme claims is that individualism is a product of particular kinds of societies, and individualism develops as societies become more advanced. Collective drives first, then individuals. In the division of labor in society, we find Durkheim arguing that the way individuals think of themselves as individuals increases with the social mass. That is, as society increases in density and becomes more complex, various activities become more and more compartmentalized, we become more individually minded and less subject to the collective mind. By looking to the collective consciousness and the common moral order of a social group, we find Durkheim's understanding of social structure. We can determine the level of development of a given social group, says Durkheim, based on the relative composition of group versus individual minds. This is what Durkheim is going to call social solidarity in one of the readings you are going to do after this video. Let's contrast this with the work of Karl Marx. Marx identifies social order with economic arrangements. There is nothing particular to social order worthy of study that the economist isn't already doing. If we understand economic life, we understand social life. Secondly, Marx's approach is scientific insofar as he argues that economic science tells us everything we need to know about the organization of society, which organizes consciousness. A scientific approach to surplus value is his ultimate goal, the one he began in Capital. For Marx, moral laws are just the outcome of relative positions in the socio-economic order. Morality is simply in place to keep people in line with their economic position. Let's return to the kitchen example before summarizing our progress. Whereas Marx would say further division of labor means further alienation, Durkheim is going to argue it is more advanced based on how segmented the individual roles are within the restaurant as a collective organism. Individual consciousnesses will develop for those performing similar tasks. We have the front of the restaurant and the back of the restaurant. Working as a dishwasher one summer, I remember there was a line at the restaurant I called the smile line, where whenever the servers would walk past, they would immediately make an angry face rather than the pretend front of the house smile. This was representative of the feelings the front and the back of the house had about one another. They couldn't stand each other. These are the kinds of moral attachments that interest Durkheim, rather than the efficiency of a particular kitchen over another, or alienation. He is interested in the social order, not the economic one. Each kitchen is a moral order, and there are identifiable, studyable, and comparable facts about them. Here's a quick summary of Durkheim's argument to this point. I said Durkheim wanted a social science of moral attachments. This means 1. Social forces are moral facts. 2. Moral forces create individuals. 3. Sociology is the science of these forces. Time for you to do the readings. I'd like you to read the rules of sociological method first before turning to the division of labor in society. See you in the next video.